to say. Yeah, things were not as happy this time around. But a lot of it, too, is different men were there. Like, Richard Grenville was a military guy, so they're unfamiliar with ways of each other, you know. What supposedly happened was one of the natives was accused of stealing a silver cup, which they probably thought, they handed me a cup to drink out of, that it must be for me to keep. So he probably thought it was a trade. And when Grenville found this out, he decided that an appropriate reaction would be to go burn the entire village down, which he did.
White man rage. Right there.
Right there for sure.
White man rage.
Let's go burn down the village and their crops.
Yes, because
this guy stole a silver cup. Like, and he probably didn't even really steal it. He thought it was a gift.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, that totally is
rational,
reasonable.
Yes.
Like,
that escalated quickly.
And honestly, this act would have consequences for like 300 years. Like, if you think about the relationship between the colonists and the natives that were here already, this act here they will remember it.
Yeah.
Both sides. You know, so it's like, you guys burned our village and our crops. Like, why would we help you?
Yeah.
You know, like, we're not going to help you out. Like, and the English do this over and over and over again, where the natives finally say, okay, you're different people, we'll help you out, and then we kill you. Like,
yeah, because we're a bunch
happens
of
over and over.
Privileged jerks.
Okay, so in September 1585, they had been on Roanoke Island, which they had originally named Virginia. They referred to this whole area as Virginia, named after Queen Elizabeth, who was the Virgin Queen, so everything's Virginia.
Didn't know that.
Yes. And for 3 months. They'd been there for 3 months. And then Grenville returned to England for more supplies because they never pack what they need. And where they're located, they can't really farm. These people that are there are not farmers. They're military people. So they are used to they travel a lot, but they're used to being able to go to a store and buy flour.
They have mercantiles.
Right, and they don't have that here. Like, they have to fend for themselves. And
you're living off the land.
They don't know. They know how to hunt, but they don't necessarily know how to grow things.
Right.
So, it's how you get scurvy, which we've talked about before.
Yes.
So, he left behind about 100 men to watch over the small fort that they had built on Roanoke. And it was basically a circular mound of earth with a stockade fence around the top. And this was left under the command of Ralph Lane, who was also a military man. They were all military men. And his orders were to scout the land for resources and survive the winter. Scout the land and survive. That's all you got to do.
So you got to do.
When their supplies ran low during the harsh winter, they turned to the natives for help.
Oh, yeah, because that's what they wanted to help.
Yes.
Help the people that burned all our crops.
Yeah.
That we can't survive.
I know. And they did supply them with some food for a while, but then they left them on the island because they're like, you people are mooching off of us. Mm-hmm. We're going to starve to death. Goodbye. Like, okay, we've helped you. Now we need to leave. So they basically left the island. And this did not sit well, obviously, with the English people because, like, why are you're leaving us to die?
I can't imagine
I know,
why.
It's just like, we're mad. Why won't you help us? Well, maybe because you burned their crops down. They don't have them to help you, you jerks.
Yeah, if you didn't burn their crops, maybe they could help you because they'd actually have food to give you.
So the colonists eventually had to resort to eating their own dogs to survive.
Oh, covered the pup's ears. Don't let them hear it.
Yep. They had relief come spring, and this is the spring of 1586. So the men that lived, once spring came, they had more fish, they had more game.
Right.
There start to be, like, plants growing, like native plants that they could eat. But at this point, they're looking for revenge. Because, they were mad that they didn't get helped all winter, and some of their men died.
So dumb.
So they went to a nearby village, saying they're, like, looking for peace. But they attacked them, and they killed the chief. His name was Wingina.
They killed the chief.
And beheaded him and stuck his head on a pike.
Because that's how you make friends.
Yep. And then a few days after this happened, a ship with the English privateer Sir Francis Drake arrived. He's a pretty famous guy. Lane and his men abandoned Roanoke to return to England with Drake. So they're like, finally, it's not the guy we want. It's not our guy. It's not Grenville coming back, but this guy's going back to England, so guess what? We're going with him. So they get on the ship and they leave. And then a few weeks later, guess who comes back to Roanoke?
The guy.
Grenville, yes. And he found it abandoned. And then because Elizabeth was stressing the point, we have to colonize. We have to have a colony. He left. He gets there. They're all gone. But he leaves 15 of his men behind and goes back to England.
I would be pissed if I was those 15 men.
Yes, but they don't realize that the men who were just there just killed a chief of a tribe across the way.
Oh, geez,
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, he
set them up for disaster.
He just dropped these 15 men off and headed back to England, right? He's like, okay.
They don't know that the people before them just started a war.
Basically, yeah. So May 1587, Queen Elizabeth sent Walter Raleigh. Raleigh is a big town in
North Carolina.
Yep, that's where it's named after, Fort Raleigh.
Mm-hmm.
This guy. He and 117 men. These are women and children. These are families, family groups. They were sent under the direction of John White, who had been there before. He was one of the ones who had made friends with the natives on that other island that went back to England. He went down, and I mean, he brought his son-in-law and his daughter, who was pregnant. They went down too. Like, so it was like these families, about, I think it was 20 family units that went down. And most of these families knew each other. They either knew each other through what they did for a living or from intermarrying, but they were all either related somehow, or because they tried to get people like, this guy's makes barrels, and this guy
people that trades that would,
right, so that they could survive as they basically sent a city there, like people could start people could start a colony. They have everything they need, just send them there. And originally they were supposed to go up the coast of Chesapeake Bay.
Okay.
So, but when they got there, let's see, these people that went were promised about 500 acres of land in Chesapeake Bay. That's what the enticement for sending them
if
there.
You go, we'll give you
land. So these people weren't necessarily in the poverty. They weren't poor people, but they weren't lords, and they didn't probably own land.
Right.
So like that's a huge enticement.
Right.
Because landowners in England were
powerful,
of the ruling class. You know, if you were like a tradesman, you didn't own land really. No. So getting your own 500 acres of land is a lot of land. You know, like they were each promised this, each family. So like, okay, so that's how they went. They knew it would be dangerous, but they went anyway. The plan was to sail to Roanoke Island to pick up the 15 men that were left there a year ago, and then sail north to Chesapeake Bay. But by the time the ship arrived at Roanoke, all the ships, all that they found was a destroyed fort and a skeleton, basically a pile of bones.
Ew.
And the captain of the ship, his name was Simon Fernandez. He was Portuguese. It was Simeo, but in English translation, the name was Simon. And he gets there and he wants to plunder Spanish ships, so he just drops them off at Roanoke. And he doesn't take them to Chesapeake Bay, he just leaves them there. He's like, no, you guys are going to stay here. And John White, even though he was technically the captain, he just went, okay.
Just like, yeah, fine, that's fine.
Okay, that's fine.
I'll stay here where there's no one, and there's a skeleton.
He's got treasure on the brain, you know. He's like, oh, I'm going to plunder these ships, and I'm going to steal all this stuff and bring back, and I'll have glory in England. So he leaves them at Roanoke, and because of the time of year that they arrived there, it was too late to plant anything. Like, they were going to have to rely on what they brought with them, and fishing and hunting. But they weren't going to have, grains or vegetables or anything, because they didn't have time. It was too late in the season to plant anything.
Was almost there or whatever.
Right. It was, later in the summer, August, I think. And some of the supplies that they had brought with them had been damaged during transit. So they were immediately in a hard spot. They were like, okay, so we're not in the place we're supposed to be, and we don't have the amount of supplies that we should have. So basically, they started out behind where they should have been.
These are all the families.
Right, these are all the families. within a few weeks of being there, one of the colonists, his name was George Howe, he was out a couple miles out on the island crabbing, like fishing, and he didn't come back, so they went and found his corpse littered with like 20 arrows. So,
well, we can assume what happened to him.
And the settlers were then afraid to stray away from the fort. They're like, okay, it's probably not safe for us to go anywhere. I mean, obviously, these natives have been killed and tricked by these white people.
So anyone they see, they're going to
3 times already. So it's like, yeah, we don't think we need you around. You can just go back to where you came from. At this point, John White was like, I know of a friendly face here. So he goes to Roanoke, and not Roanoke, he goes to Croatoan, and he finds Manteo.
Right, the one
was
that
the native that went to England that liked the England. And so he agreed to act as a go-between between the new settlers and the natives that were on the mainland.
Makes sense.
Just to smooth things over. So he's like, they're not here to...
They're not the same people.
Yeah, they're different. They just want to, like, live here and grow food in peace, and they don't want to bother you. Okay. And he was, like, setting up a meeting between the mainland natives and John White. It was set to happen on August 6th. And when the day passed and there's no contact, he took that as they wanted war. So he organized an attack party, because that's what they did.
The second something doesn't go exactly the way I want it,
it can't be
I'll
because
just kill people.
Maybe you got held up. It's like, oh no, this is the date. He's not here. They're planning war immediately. So in the middle of the night, White and the men, they attacked the first village they came to.
Just any old village.
Yeah, they came to the first village they came to. There was natives there. They attacked them.
Oh my god!
It turned out they were Manteo's tribe.
The one person on their side.
And they killed two. Two of the natives had been killed, and it took weeks for White to convince them that it was a mistake. Oh no, we thought you were different.
Oh,
people.
Whoops!
Like,
oops!
Yeah, that's got to be in your brain though. Like, these people are stupid, and they killed us when we're trying to help them. And now they're like, "Oh no, I'm sorry. That was a mistake."
That doesn't count. You can't do that. You just killed 2 people. There's no oops.
Yeah.
Then.
So, yeah.
What a bunch of idiots.
Okay, and not long after this, White's daughter gave birth to a baby girl, who they named Virginia. Big surprise.
Right.
And within a few days of this, the colonists elected John to return to England for supplies. This is according to his journals. A lot of this information came from John White's journals, which they have in England. And a lot of his maps that he drew while he was here. And I guess he was gifted, because they can take one of the maps that he drew, you can take it and lay it over a modern map of that coast, and it's almost exact.
Wow.
You know, it's pretty amazing that
he could draw that.
Primitive, instruments, he could do that,
yeah.
You know? Well, anyway, they said, oh, somebody needs to go back to England, because they'd been there about a month, and they knew they weren't going to survive.
Right.
So they're like, someone needs to go back to England to get more supplies and come back. Well, they elected him. Probably, I mean, it could have been that, you know, he was really elected. Like, they thought he would be the quickest to do it. Or it could be they wanted to get him out of there so they didn't have any more massacres. Which, I'm thinking it was the latter.
Yeah. We don't need you screwing things up anymore.
And he did not want to go. Like, his daughter just had a baby, but they made him go. They're like, no, you have to go. So he set sail for England on August 27th of 1587. Before he left, he made an agreement with the settlers that if they had to leave the fort, they would leave a sign to indicate where they were going. And if they were made to leave Roanoke, if they were in distress, they were supposed to put a cross above the name of where they went.
Okay.
So that he would know
where to find them.
Right? And if they were in distress, he would know that as well.
Right, like, I had to leave because something bad happened.
Right. So once he got back to England, they were at war with Spain, and Spain had a huge armada, so the Queen was not allowing any ships to leave to go back. They were all being used to fight this war against Spain. So he was in England for 3 years before he was able to go back to help them.
He was supposed to get supply.
Yes, but because the queen is like, no, I need that ship for my war, so you have to wait.
Plus the time it takes to sail across.
Right.
Yeah.
Months. We're talking like 6 months probably is what it took to get there. To be